Welcome to Co-Designing Virtual Reality with Teens. My name is Allison McKenzie, and I am the director of the Fayette Public Library, Museum, and Archives in LaGrange, Texas. I was also part of the project team for the IMLS-funded grant, Caring About Teen Mental Health. If you are interested in building stronger bonds with teens, improving teen well-being, and creating a culture of collaboration at your library, then this video is for you. Today, we will be talking about what is co-design, why is co-design important in libraries, the co-design framework that we used in the Caring About Teen Mental Health project, and then myself and other team members will have a conversation about putting co-design into practice. Let's get started. Co-design. The overarching principles of co-design are that all co-designers are created equal. We're all equal partners. There are no experts, and we are learning together. Every opinion is valid, and equity is of the most importance in the co-design process. Design takes place without constraints, and there are no preconceived notions. We would like youth and adults to be designing together instead of adults designing for youth. To be able to facilitate co-design sessions, you must be able to engage in open and honest conversations with teens and to care about them and build genuine relationships. These relationships are so important in the co-design process. You also must be willing to take on a learner role instead of an expert. You will be learning with youth, not teaching them something. This all goes back to sharing power. Power should be shared. And again, there's nobody that's necessarily an expert. We also have to admit our mistakes, our failures, and then learn from them. It's okay to experiment with different things to see what will work and what will not work. That's all a part of the learning process and the co-design process. So why is it important in libraries to use co-design? Well, it is beneficial to teen mental health and gives them voice that they may not feel that they have in other areas of their life, such as school. It makes them feel seen and heard as they are equal contributors throughout the process. And it also creates a culture of collaboration at your library. For the Caring for Teen Mental Health project, our co-design workflow looked like this. It was broken into 3 parts over a 6-month period. And you can see the workflow image here, as well as what the 3 phases were. The first phase was ideation. We had design sessions where co-designers built relationships, explored the possibilities of virtual reality, built comfort and confidence in talking about mental health as an everyday experience. And then in the second phase, we went through a process of design sprints. During the design sprints, ideas that were generated in phase 1, co-designers were able to hone in on what makes sense to include in a mental health virtual reality experience. And lastly, phase 3 was prototype and feedback. After our co-designers developed ideas for a VR experience, the VR developers and interns began to work on building that experience while receiving feedback on the builds and iterating, leading the final VR product. And so this is what co-design looked like in the Caring About Teen Mental Health project. So next, I'm going to have a conversation with several of my colleagues about what co-design looked like at their libraries, as well as why they feel it is beneficial and how they will be using it in the future. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this conversation about co-design for the Caring About Teen Mental Health project. And I would like everyone to have an opportunity to introduce themselves. Again, I am Allison McKenzie. I am the director of the Fayette Public Library, Museum and Archives in LaGrange, Texas. We are a small rural community in Central Texas, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my colleague, Kathleen.
Hi, so my name is Kathleen Kono. I am a library associate at DC Public Library. We're in Washington, DC, an urban library with 26 branches. And yeah, that's me.
Hi, my name is Shelly Masalish. I'm currently the temporary teen student success program manager at the Seattle Public Library. And when we were implementing this program, I was actually a teen services librarian for the Seattle Public Library at the Central Branch. And we are a larger urban library system.
Hi, I'm Eric. I am a recent graduate of the University of Washington, Seattle informatics program. This past year, I worked in IT and software development while also working on this project. And I took a gap year, and now I will be pursuing my master's degree at Columbia in New York City.
Thank you. And I just also want to clarify that DC and Seattle offered their co-design sessions virtually, while in Texas, we offered ours in person. So some of our experiences are a little different, but there are also a lot of similarities. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started on our first question, and that is, share your experience with co-design and why you feel it's important to youth.
So sure, I'll start us off. So in DC Public Library, we had our virtual sessions. And of course, we did a variety of different fun tasks during our different sessions, but co-design stayed central throughout everything. We used tools. I think most of us use tools that were like Miro boards, which are collaborative boards. And so we really communicated with the teens in our program using those kind of tools. And I think it was really beneficial to youth because they really got to see visually their thoughts come together. And also when we actually got into things such as design sprints, which was a more structured format for co-design, they were able to really just throw ideas out there and have them taken seriously, I think was really important. At the same time, us adults, the librarians and the staff involved, we were able to take ourselves a little less seriously, which is really refreshing, I think, to all of the various participants. We're able to meet each other on a similar level. We're able to add some silly things while also staying serious about a shared goal. And that was really the most valuable thing, was for teens to feel like they belonged in the discussion and that this wasn't an assignment. This was something that was a collaboration.
So thinking about co-design, I think that co-design, we actually use it all the time when we're working with youth in a lot of ways already, because when we're working with youth, the highest thing that we want, right, is youth actually designing the programs that they go to, or at the library or in other settings. So right, like I think about Heart's Ladder and like that ultimate participation is just like the youth really creating what they're using and what they are attending. So I think a little bit that so in the past, like I think a lot about our service learning opportunities at the Seattle Public Library, where I and colleagues, right, the ultimate thought is just like, where do communities come together? What are the goals of the teens themselves? And then what is the mission of the library, and how can we reunite these? And so we work together on teams, right? Designing different programs or different projects that really combine those three essences. And we're doing that together, right? So thinking about co-design in this setting, it was a little bit more formalized for me. It was interesting because I think that really using the word co-design is just like something that you do already, but like it is neat to kind of get that extra like lens of like, oh, this is what this is in a lot of ways, which kind of aids in your learning and understanding and how you can actually implement, I think, co-design. So at the Seattle Public Library, we were the first to run this project. And so 4 people, including me and Eric, who is also here, we would get together about a week before, or that week of an actual meeting with the youth who were working on this project, and we would kind of go through what that next session would look like, right? Like what we would include, what would be our icebreaker, what were the questions that we should ask that would really prompt to get some good responses. And for a few of those meetings, we actually we had teens come to those meetings for a few of them, which was very useful. And I wish that, I think in the future, that would be a great way to kind of have more youth voice at that planning table, right? Because again, we're trying to make it so that we're all on the same level. That's the point of co-design. We're all participating and we're all have voice in what's coming. So I think that youth often gave perspective of like, well, maybe we've already kind of done that. Maybe we should focus on something new, or maybe this is a better question to ask. So that's kind of how co-design went for this actual project. And I think that co-design, I think I have already kind of mentioned it, it's like the ultimate for youth participation, right? So it like the importance of it is like that is the ultimate goal of a program that when working with youth, is that really their voices should be included and their voices should be at the same level as the adults in the room, right? That's the whole point of co-design, is making us all at the same table and at the same level and sharing power. So I think, again, that's the ultimate of any youth programming, is co-design.
Right. And I will agree with Shelley and Kathleen in that it does give youth voice and empower them to be equals with us, where very much of the time, if they're in school, their voice is not heard. And so they could be engaging in an activity or something and have an idea, and they are not viewed as the experts, versus throughout the co-design process, everybody is learning together, and there's no one person's an expert and one person isn't. We're all on a level playing field. And so I definitely agree with both of them on that. And I think the other important piece, which was one of my favorites while implementing the co-design process, was the relationship building piece, and really forming those genuine relationships with teens and learning about their interests and learning from them in general. And I think that when you are building those relationships, the co-design process is, so rewarding, because you are learning more from them, and they're open and they're willing to share things and share ideas. And so I think that piece of making sure that they feel that you're an equal, so that then they can open up and share with the group, is another part of co-design that I have really enjoyed and plan on implementing as well in the future. But I am going to go and pass it to Eric to last but not least.
So I think one thing that's unique about my experience, and I did forget to mention this before, is that I've actually conducted 3 co-designs already. I was originally part of the game research group in the information school at the University of Washington. We conducted a co-design on esports and mental health. I worked under Professor Jinha Lee and Jason Yip, and Jason actually, his research is specifically in co-design, and more specifically, his was based off of how do you take a co-design out of the classroom? How can you make it non-academic? And I think that's really important, right? Because kids are sitting in the classroom all day, 9 months out of the year, right? So giving them a new type of learning experience that they haven't had before is really something key. And I think there's a lot of positive feedback to that because a lot of the teens actually enjoy this process. And when we had our closing, our surveys, all the teens said they learned something new. They better understand mental health. I think this is so valuable in the fact that it's non-academic, that being able to take this out of the classroom, it's something that teens enjoy and that they can take way more out of in a new environment. I think too that another unique experience is that I also worked with both the Seattle Public Library and the DC Public Library. And that really, my perspective really changed because I got to see different environments, different libraries try out different things. And I think what was key is that with Seattle, a lot of them, they came from co-design background. So the Seattle libraries, some of us already did co-design, so they kind of knew more what to expect. We did a lot of experimentation. I think that's really important. And I think that what really is important is when I was with Seattle, we experimented. We used this software called Mozilla Hubs. And with Mozilla Hubs, right, it was purely testing. We had no idea what to expect. We didn't know how good it was. It went okay, but we ended up going with another software called CoSpaces. I think what's important is we do have that roadmap on the website, but don't follow it verbatim. If you are going to implement this, be sure to experiment, try something new, let it flow. Let this mold to your program, to your teams. And I really think having active teams who are there every day really makes a big difference. So that's just kind of my piece on, for teens, it's a great learning experience. And I think that the creativity and the freedom of co-design is what makes it so valuable.
Absolutely. So our next question that we are going to discuss is, how is co-design adaptable? How do you plan on using it in the future at your library if you aren't already, or maybe you are? And also, what would be your advice to libraries getting started, even if they look at the VRtality website, but what would be your advice of how you can get started on a maybe smaller scale with co-design in the library?
So yeah, I'll start us off. So yeah, our co-design process overall was a big learning experience in how to articulate what we were doing, but I think a lot of us are using these techniques already. A lot of it really comes down to working with your teams and listening to your teams and not being afraid to implement your ideas plus their ideas and kind of compromise on things. So if you have, like, for example, a teen advisory board, teen council, you may already be doing some collaboration work with them. So something like that is really valuable to have the skills of co-design for that. In terms of what you can do, like going forward with programs, I think the biggest key I would recommend is to have something new that you are learning alongside the teams. And yeah, it doesn't have to be VR, but you can explore new software, new technology, or even just like a new craft, a new something, because that really will equalize everyone. No one is going to be the one expert. Even if your teams have some familiarity with it, which we encountered, Some of our teens were already familiar with VR. I was already familiar with VR before the project, but the things we were doing were so different using co-design that that's what equalized us. We were all new to the process itself, plus using the new skills that we were learning technologically using VR. That together is a good combo. So pick some kind of skill that you'd like to collaborate to create something with, whether it's a new art technique or anything really. That's my biggest recommendation.
Kathleen, I really love that you spoke to choosing something that maybe you haven't done before, which I think is is like very key. And I have thought about it, but you kind of, I feel like, hit the nail on the head. Because once you like choose something that you don't know anything about, you automatically, are more willing probably to make mistakes, which I think is a big part of co-design, right? Like not everything is going to work out. And you may have sessions that are like you end and you're like, how did really went? Or like, but I think that that's important, right? Because if we don't, and like speaking to what Eric said prior, if you don't like mess around or just try something new, like I think that just more possibilities open up with that. So I love what you said to that. And I will also I was also thinking a lot about how I kind of previously mentioned how co-design has been used with our service learning projects, which is similar to like a teen service learning board. So that's already like something that you may be able to kind of easily implement. Is just working with youth on like designing a program together or designing a project together. And and just making sure that it's shared. And what might also be great is just like if you can kind of split also up maybe the facilitation of those meetings, like having youth facilitate the meetings and like what do they need to prep for that. But I think that like ultimately like passing around the power in any way that you can makes for a good co-design. So that's what I got.
Yes. So I will say yes to both Kathleen and Shelley. And I do agree that I like the idea of venturing into something that you may not be familiar with, because I had never used VR or even put on a headset before I participated in this project. So I made a lot of mistakes and I learned a lot from youth. And I think that was a really rewarding part for me. And I also think that, again, going back to what Eric said about the website, is don't get so overwhelmed by all of the information in every single step that was with it we went through as the project, but you can pick just one thing. So you could co-design things and focus on mental health. You can co-design and just focus on VR. You could co-design and just use co-spaces. So there's a lot of flexibility with how you can facilitate it and what platforms or technologies you're going to use. But I think I just want to remind everyone that it doesn't have to be a large scale project. It can just be starting to be more intentional when you plan your programs with youth about making sure that you're doing these things that we've been talking about, like making sure power is equal and learning from one another and building relationships. So I think that there could be very little cost to implementing something. And I believe the process is beneficial to youth mental health in general, simply because we're giving them a place that is safe and comfortable and they can contribute to. And I think that ultimately that in itself is very rewarding to them. So Eric, go ahead and go ahead.
So yeah, actually, I do want to touch on a bit of what Kathleen said, because I think they gave some very insightful ideas. Is that it is important to try something new and have different skill sets. that I think that, you know, coming from my first co-design, it was more of a learning experience for everyone. I had a professor who had the experience of doing co-designs in the past, kind of used that. I read several of his papers and I tried implementing some of the ideas from there. Coming into the Seattle project, again, they had experience as well doing co-design. We kind of based it a little off of that one. So I actually played more of a technical role with Seattle because they had more experience, but they didn't have a tech person to really handle all of the debugging, IT, all of that work. Coming with DC, we already had a tech person. Joanna was the one handling all the IT work, all the tech support. While for me, I was there to mainly help them go over co-design because this was their first time doing co-design. So from my perspective, I think it is really important to have a diverse set of people. Some people with, if you can, co-design experience, someone with tech experience, someone who's just a designer. Actually, my first project, we even brought in a game designer because we ended up making a card game. So that was really interesting. The more diversity you have in this project, I think the more successful it's going to be. I think another learning experience I found is slow down. You really want to go slow. In Seattle, we did a session every other week. We met every week to plan out the sessions. I think that's really important, is to have that background so you're not going too quickly, you're not missing things, it's not going to turn into a mess. And I really made that a point when I'm going into that DC project. Also, as I touched on before, please don't follow this verbatim. As I said with Seattle, we really did experiment. Some things went well, some things didn't. And it was really, so we had ideas because that was just the environment we were in at the time. Especially because some of you may do it in person, some of you may do it virtually, right? That's going to be a completely different experience. And I think that is really key. You don't need to follow the book. It's just there to help you. And then also, if you can try to understand co-design, hopefully that's why we're here, is to help you figure that out. But the more you understand what a co-design is, I think the easier time it will be. Even if you don't know, you'll notice that as time goes on, the project will get easier because you'll start to really figure out the kinks, figure out what you're good at, what you're not, and what goes right, what doesn't. And then, so yeah, and I think that is kind of really what makes co-design so successful when implementing it.
Great. Well, thank you all for sharing and reflecting on our experience with this project over the past couple of years. And thank you all for being here.